Morning, everybody. Once you come on, say hello in the chat. Super excited to have everybody here. Let's see. Yeah, as soon as you guys are here, come on and say hello. Say where you're tuning in from. This is the Elevated Mother Collective Open Q&A Friday. So we've got some members of my team popping on. My name is Robin Whitworth.
As you might cover.
Founder. Hey, Jacqueline. I think I saw, was it Kim pop on? Love Kim. If you guys don't follow Kim on social, you're missing out on delicious food ideas, inspiration, and just like so much fun. Jacqueline, your new realtor in the Oregon Tillamook area. She will sell all your houses or whatever she's doing. I don't know much about real estate. I probably said the wrong thing. It looks like we have like 7 or 8 people on here, and I can only see a few people. Maybe I can make it to where I can scroll. Oh, I can. So I can see Cherie. I can see Latia. I'm spot on. Look at me. I've learned so much from having you in our space. Jacqueline is currently one of our Elevated Mother Experience clients, so that's fun. Say hello in the chat when you're here. Please use the chat throughout the Q&A. If you came with a question, you came with something on your heart, put a 1 in our chat as we get going. I know that it takes a second for a lot of people, sometimes up to like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes for people to like get the notification and get in here, but we want to get started on concepts and ideas and coaching as soon as we can. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking part of your day to receive coaching, to receive what's being offered. My team and I look forward to these all the time. We're like, it's the Q&A, it's the Q&A. Who's coming to the Q&A? Are we ready for the Q&A? Like, this is really a serious, we take it seriously. It's a beautiful thing. Some of the members of my team, if you want to ever message them directly, today we have on, I think I see Cherie Carlisle and Megan Heward and Christy Garcia. So if you ever want to reach out to those ladies here in the Circle community, they know all things. You can be like, hey, Robin said this, or Cherie said that, or tell me more about this thing. They are all willing to answer your questions and to be there for you. So, right, Latia? It's so fun. You guys were like together on this coaching call on this Friday in October. I know some of us are getting ready for trunk and treats, depending on where you live and what you're doing. Who else popped on here? Serena, down in Texas. We got Alicia. Make sure you guys mute yourselves. I mean, we want you to come off mute and talk, but like, it would be a crazy chicken house sound, I think, if Kim says that her thing is being echoey. Well, sometimes it will be echoey if people are off mute. Serena, I can't hear you. So you are doing great. Does the sound okay to everyone else? Somebody give me, thank you, Latia. Like, somebody give me a thumbs up. Still working on my new tech setup, and sometimes that means redoing some stuff. All right, so yeah, I don't know how to help you more, Kim, if because the sound seems to be okay. Maybe come on and off, I don't know. But yeah, if someone else is unmuted and then you hear through theirs, it sounds like an echo. So that's why I say make sure if you're not the one speaking or being coached to keep your mute on. It's just the way this circle room seems to work. It really echoes if people are not off mute or on, you know what I mean? If they're not muted. Okay, so one in the chat, put a one in the chat if you want to be coached, you want talk to us about faith. And all of us, so Megan taught this month, Cherie taught this month, I taught this month. If you have specific questions for any three of us, I think I'm safe in saying, right, ladies, that you could ask us any question about anything we taught on. So, and any question in between. Our combined knowledge and experience is fantastic. I see Heather Shoemaker popped on. Internet the last few days has been a little bit weird, so let me know if it's weird enough that I need to change the host or something. But so fun to see all of you guys here. No questions. What the heck are you guys doing on this Friday? Yeah, sometimes I'll get a little glitchy if my internet is like whatever, but if it ever gets to where I'm like pausing for 5 and 6 seconds at a time, let me know. You guys are taking time on this Friday. What did you want to hear? What are you hoping to get? We didn't come with a whole list of things that we want to teach. We're here for you. Any questions you have for me or the team on faith, on anything, we're here for you guys. Jacqueline. I feel like I'm in a cycle of repeating old patterns. Let's talk about that for a second. And then Serena says she has a question too. So let's talk with Jacqueline for a little bit. Jacqueline, do you want to come off mute and chat, or do you want to just talk about that concept in general?
I could come off mute. So I feel like I'm in like a low energy pattern, and I just feel like it's because there's a lot going on. And then it's like the cycle of like my physical body doesn't feel good because I'm not eating well. Then I don't want to exercise, and like I have teenagers going all different directions that like we got some pretty heavy news about just about like my daughter's choices. And so there's that. And there's like, I told my mom yesterday, I'm like, in my head, I'm trying to buy a house. I'm trying to start a new business. We're buying a car this weekend. I was like, I just feel overwhelmed. So I was like, I need a break. So maybe I just need some more self-care.
Jacqueline, I love this because, and anyone that wants to put a little hand in the chat or a little heart for Jacqueline, the power of the collective is something we talk about a lot in this space. Nobody is alone. Nobody has not gone back to, right? And I'm going to change that in a second, but had the feeling that they're going back to a pattern. Anybody want to give a little heart in the chat so that Jacqueline knows, like, this is not, and sometimes we know that we're like, yeah, I know I'm not the only one. That's when we get a look and say, then why does this bother me so much? Like, why am I bugged? And this is where we get to reframe. This is where we reframe, because you come into a coaching program typically when you do feel like, hey, things are not moving. I feel stuck. That's a cycle, right? And what we've learned in the Elevated Mother experience, and I say that because Jacqueline's been in our space. So I go, what we've learned there is that our old patterns are simply neurological patterns of mastery. You've mastered whatever it is you have, like, oh, this feels familiar. So the world wants us to believe everything is linear. So we think if I've been here before, that must mean I went backwards. Do you see how linear thinking? That makes total sense. That makes total sense. That if I think everything's just on a line, that if I feel something familiar, I must went back somewhere. Right? And that's a pattern of mastery. And we go, ooh, what pattern of mastery is this? That's one of my favorite questions these days. What pattern of mastery is this? Is this my overwhelm pattern of mastery? Right? Is this my whatever it is? Whatever it is. And at every stage of life and growth and learning, we'll develop new patterns, but until they become a pattern of mastery, we may not revisit them. So realize that even though you feel like, man, I went back to an old pattern, it's like, oh, number one, the truth is you didn't actually go back anywhere, but your body said, this feels comfortable because I'm dealing with all of this discomfort. I get to go somewhere where I feel comfortable so I can deal with it. But you didn't actually go backwards, right? Cherie.
Okay. Jacqueline, you just went through a quantum leap, right? Like you passed your exam. You're like, I'm doing all these things. I'm achieving my goals. Like I'm doing the things, right? So you reach this like pinnacle of height of like emotion, like, yes, I'm achieving my goals. I'm doing the things like, and you went through a quantum leap. And guess what? Then your body gets to catch up. And so it's almost like your ego and your body's like trying to pull you and like, ooh, this feels uncomfortable because it's new and we don't know what we're doing. And so you're like Robin said, you're going back to the comfort space, which is okay. I just want to acknowledge this. This is okay. Like it's okay. Like we talk about the peaks and the valleys, right? It's okay at times to park at the bottom and be like, you know what? I need a season of rest. I love that you acknowledge that maybe I need some more self-care here. So recognizing like, oh, wait a minute. Like I just went through this big, huge jump, this big quantum leap. My body's trying to catch up to where my brain and my spirit and all the things. And so your contrast is showing up in a lot of different areas, right? And that feels hard. And you're like, ooh, I don't like this. I just want to like go back to the comfort and and so like Robin said, though, it's like you've been running this 5-lane highway and we've been helping you mind map into this little path that you've been forging on your own in your brain. And your brain's like, oh yeah, but this highway feels more comfortable right now. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay to get back on that highway if it feels safe, if it feels comfortable right now. But I want to encourage you to get back on that path that you're forging that looks different when you're ready. So just give yourself the grace and allow yourself to be in that space as you need it. And don't judge it and just be like, oh yeah, I just went through this huge quantum leap and my body is trying to catch up to where, this big spiritual, amazing, incredible thing. And my body's trying to catch up and it feels a little tired. So yes, extra self-care and the contrast is showing up. So it's the universe saying, do you really want this change? Do you really want to do all these things? And it's like, yes, you do. And so you get to choose it. It's a choice. So that's my take on these things. And I'm so excited for you, Jacqueline, all the goals you're achieving.
Do you have any thoughts, Jacqueline?
No, but that made me
Good.
feel a million times better. And I think I know it's that moment of like celebrating, like I did a big thing, and then and I told my mom, I'm like, we're not buying a house. Like we are buying a car, but we're not buying a house. Like I don't have to do, I'm feeling all the anxiety of all the future things. And I'm like, I need to get my focus off of there and be present and back in the moment. So, yes. That was super helpful.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Beautiful. And that's what I love about the collective is that as you saw all those hearts going in the chat, when someone is vulnerable and comes off with their question, it helps so many others. It helps so many others to be able to be coached and lifted in the similar, like, oh, that's something I was doing too. Did I go through a big change? You know, did I reach a dream and a goal and identity? Yes. Jacqueline has shifted that so drastically over the last little bit. And you may not think it's drastic, but to have told me, I remember you told me that dream, what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago? I'm going to be a realtor and I'm going to do this. And now it's like all the steps have happened. And then she's got this emotional stuff that what I love to say is that it's stuff that was already going to happen. Life will always keep moving. So the teenager or adult child, whatever it is, coming in hot with choices that you're like, those are some tough consequences to decide to carry. And we feel sad as their parent for the amount of discomfort we know that they're about to wade in. That's a loving parent feeling that. But that was going to happen anyway, right? Their choices are their choices. So it's like, well, that wasn't something I did. Life will always happen. The car will break down. Something goes wrong financially. Something happens to our health. Something will always, like, life just keeps happening. We have to remember, where am I in my energetics? Because I get to tell the story of what's happening then. I have full choice here. Yes, my dreams are all coming true alongside all the things that are going to happen in my life, right? Because they're just going to happen. And if we sit in the what ifs and we sit in the future, then we get very overwhelmed because the future is completely fictional with full of, probability of all sorts of events, but we don't know any of them. All we know is the energy we can sit in today. And I love that Latia talked about that in the chat, where she's like, I woke up today and chose and said, today is going to be different. I took time for my Bible study and I took time to do this thing, because sometimes those old patterns of mastery was when we had a significant event and we just kind of held on for dear life, and we maybe stayed there for a while because life can do that. So it becomes a pattern that we get in to feel safe. And then we get to, in the program, we call it our prescription cards. We create our own personal prescription card for us that helps us re-anchor into our life. We go, oh yeah, Jacqueline is a winner. Jacqueline succeeds. Jacqueline is a daughter of God. Jacqueline is always worthy and loved. Whatever those things are that help you get back to that place. But we don't judge that the highway or whatever was more comfortable. We just go, oh yeah. And then look at me going back over to my path and going, oh yeah. And the more often you do that, the easier it is. It just is. You recognize it, get over, you just go, oh yeah. Thank goodness. That's what I think though. Thank goodness that we have patterns of mastery we've developed that help us stay safe when we feel super unstable. I've learned to be grateful for my patterns of mastery because it allows me in a scary moment to go, nope, I'm still grounded. I'm still okay. And then after a season, I go, oh, I know why I did that. Thank you. And now I'm choosing this consciously. Now I'm choosing this. Good stuff in the chat, you guys. Oh yes, presence over perfect. Yes, Jackie Muhlstein. If you guys don't follow her, go read all of her posts. They're so great. They're so great. Serena, how can we continue to choose faith and not feel fear and anxiety when we see so much evidence for the opposite. Fear keeps showing up, and then I'm fearful that I'm fearing too much. Anyone else done this? Can we stand in solidarity with Serena? That we're like, no, don't think of scarcity, because then that means I'm in scarcity. Wait, did I just bring more scarcity? Like, about money or relationships, whatever we're working through. Put a little heart in the chat. Guys, let's just stand with our sisters and just be like, yes, she is not alone. You're not the only one that's ever felt this, done this. Like, she's like, fear keeps showing up. Then I'm fear, right? Then my thoughts go down and then my thoughts don't want to slow down. Big things have happened, and so it feels big. Like it could be the next big bad thing. Okay. Guys, Serena, look in the chat. We're all loving you and feeling you. Part of Serena's journey was realizing how many other people this is normal. She's not less than or an anomaly for having big experiences, things that feel fearful. Okay? So it's beautiful that you guys are all making sure to give her that awareness. It's okay. It's beautiful. Thoughts from the team on this? We got Christy, Megan, Cherie, Heather. Do you guys have thoughts?
I do.
Who came off?
I have thoughts just working with Serena, right? She has gone through a lot of trauma. So in that traumatized state, and Serena, I want to acknowledge how much work you've done in this area, right? Like you're not even the same person. Like I met Serena when I joined this program, like in 2022, like March 2022. So like we've been together from the beginning. And so like Serena's transformation, you guys, she's like a completely different person in so many ways. So I want to acknowledge how far you've come. Like, I'm so proud of you, Serena, but acknowledging that you're aware that you're going down that fear, right? Like, you're like, I'm feeling very fearful in this situation. And I feel like maybe I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. That's like a saying, right? Like, I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. That is your trauma response. And that is completely normal based on the amount of trauma that you've gone through in your life. And so I just want to be like, I want to, one, acknowledge that you are aware of it. So that's always the number one thing, right? We teach in this program is like, awareness is king. Or should we say queen? We'll change it. It's queen. It's the queen. It's the queen of all the things, right? Like awareness, right? Serena, you're aware of it, right? And we talk a lot about faith, right? And we have, and like you were saying, choosing faith over fear, they can't coexist. It's impossible. It's like light and darkness. They cannot both be in the same space at the same time. You can't be in a dark room and a light room at the same time, right? So just making sure that you're aware, which you are, of all the things that you're choosing. And then you just get to breathe through it and be like, what am I feeling right now? Because there's a difference between feeling fear of what's next, which is anxiety, is fear of the future, fear of the unknown, right? So it's like do you want to sit in the unknown, the anxiety of the unknown, or do you want to rein it back in and be like, what am I actually feeling right here in this moment, going to the present moment and sitting there and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling in that moment. And maybe it's stress. Maybe you're like, financially, like, I mean, I don't even know what it's going to cost for my daughter. She just had a mouth accident. Who knows why? It's all the things. And I had this moment yesterday where I was like, oh, I don't even want to know what this is going to cost, right? Like, but then I was just like, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We just sold our Tahoe. Hallelujah. I'm going to meet the guy today. So there's all these little blessings along the way, right? But every time I go to, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? It's like coming back to the present moment. How am I feeling right now? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling stressed about that, which is not helpful? Can I rein it back and be in the present moment and be like, what am I feeling right now? And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for all of these professionals that have stepped forward, that have the capability to talk me through all the things going on with my daughter and her health. And the blessing that came from going to the orthodontist, and he's doing the whole panoramic, and he's like, her mouth is too small. We're going to need to get her started on this, and I'm like, I probably would not have known that, So it's the gratitude. I'm sitting in the gratitude and not the fear of what's coming, right? And I'm with you, Serena. I know you and I have had similar trials, right? In the trauma, in the things. And so I just want to acknowledge like how much work you're already doing. You're doing such a good job. And just ask yourself when you go to have that fear step in, is this what I want to feel? And can I come back to the present moment and acknowledge what you're feeling in the current moment without what's going on in the future? That's just my take, what I personally have experienced that's been helpful for me.
Thanks, Cherie. Hannah brought up a really good point that I think would be important. I feel that it's important. Hannah commented on Serena's question, and she says, I often worry that she feels she's ignoring the fear if she reframes it. If I'm ignoring the fear, maybe it's a warning that I should listen to. How do we decipher the two? Is it two, right? Team, do you have thoughts on this? I do, but I would love to hear what you guys have worked through on this idea.
I'll share. I was going to say maybe Cherie can kind of word this better, but I was talking to Cherie last week because I was actually having a hard time distinguishing, like, am I feeling the spirit or am I sitting in like rumination? Because I ruminate a lot because of trauma and things. Like, it used to run my life. So Serena, I feel like we can relate a lot on that. We've had some conversations, but Cherie was helping me explain that the spirit doesn't speak to us through fear. Like, we don't feel, I think she was also saying, like, it doesn't cause an emotion. Like, there's no emotion behind that. Whereas, like, oftentimes when we're like fearful or we're like ruminating, like, there's an emotion behind that. So, like, to me, that really helped because I'm the same way. It's like, oh my goodness, like, I was kind of always in this panic and kind of felt like that's how I felt the spirit. And I'm relearning at 35 years old that I'm like, I don't know how to feel the spirit. Like, and so I'm relearning. And we even talked about, maybe it was on the team call, I can't remember, we were kind of talking about different ways that we feel the spirit speak to us because we're all individual, we're all different, right? So I think getting more in tune with that of like, how do we know when things are true? And then in moments of feeling overwhelm or fear or things like that, we can actually talk ourselves kind of out of that spiral, in a sense, of where our brain is just going places, because our brain wants to protect us. Our brain is really, really smart and it just wants to protect us. And so sometimes we have to realize, like, okay, thank you, brain, noted, but I'm not gonna feed into that. I noticed it and now I can choose something different. And I have to do that on a pretty regular basis. But it was interesting when she was sharing that with me. She's like, it's just, it's true. Like, it just comes as like a knowing or a remembering. Like, we remember it because we know it already. So I loved when she shared that with me because now I'm noticing that more and I'm not connecting the fear based thinking as, oh, that's the spirit speaking to me, or that's truth.
Thoughts? Christy, do you have any thoughts on this? It's okay if you don't.
I was just going to add to that. Like, they put it so beautifully. So you can maybe hear Brooklyn in the background, but that yes, like our thoughts are just thoughts, and we can say, you know what, I'm going to choose not to believe that. But I love, Hannah, that you're also being like, but I know my feelings are trying to tell me something. Like, you are trying to listen to yourself, and that is wisdom. Like, our feelings are there for a reason. They come up for us to address something, for things to be healed, for our safety, for all sorts of reasons. So I love that you're being like, but shouldn't I pay attention to this? Of course we want you to pay attention to your feelings. For Serena, for Hannah, we're not saying push it down, ignore it. We don't want the bad feelings, the uncomfortable feelings. We're not saying that. We're saying we can take a look at it and be like, okay, I see why that's coming up. I see how that feels in my body. Now I want to shift out of it. That's not where I want to stay. If the fear is the red flag saying, hey, something's wrong, great. I get to turn my attention and I get to look at it and I get to go deeper. And then I love how you said that's not a fruit of the spirit, fear. So we get to go to the Lord and say, okay, this is coming up to make me aware. Help me shift. I want to move to peace, or I want to move to understanding. I want to move to, whatever the emotion is, not because we're trying to get rid of fear, but we're trying to learn from it to move on. Right? Does that make sense? So I just wanted to add that little tidbit, but I love the other, how it was explained as well.
Yes, yes, yes. And Serena, if you guys read her next comment, beautiful self-coaching. She's like, okay, the fear sent me a message, right? Cherie did a class a long time ago now. What was it, a year? It was like, our emotions are our messengers. So when you feel the fear, you go, oh, I'm receiving a message, right? And then, as Christy was saying, then we learn. And if this is a foreign concept, a hard concept, come into the Elevated Mother Experience. We give you so much more tools and context around this skill. But you can learn about your choice. How do I switch into choice then? From like, okay, my emotions are letting me know something's happening here. But we get to remain neutral and be like, let me witness my feeling. Let me breathe the feeling. Let me see it. And then try to sit in those things. And as she said beautifully, this is what's going to work for her. I felt the spirit. Then I know certain things not be on the same page, but I'm going to just keep leaning into the present, staying calm and taking one moment at a time. Hallelujah, sister. That is your way. And your way, the way your brain constructs it, is always right. It's always the right way. It's the best way. Like, that is what Serena's going to do. And I think that's fabulous. I think it's so good. So, so good. Hannah put a little more context in there about how she's felt the spirit. She's felt the urge to flee. Yeah. I don't know, Cherie, can you come off and talk a little bit? Oh, Christy, do you want to come off and talk a little bit?
Oh, sure. I'll go after Christy.
I was just gonna that last comment, Hannah, that you made. So I was living in New York City the year before COVID, and I got the impression to flee. And I had to sit with myself. I said, okay, is this me? Like, I just want to leave New York because I was far away from family, had all these other things that were going on. Or is this really a prompting? Like you said, like not being able to decipher, like learning to trust your intuition. And so I took those feelings. I feel like we need to leave. I feel like we need to leave right now. Like you said, the urgency right there. And then I went to the Lord. And I said, okay, this is how I'm feeling. That's how it interprets in my mind. That's how I'm understanding it. Can you help me confirm that? Right. And how I understand, how the Lord speaks to me. I felt confirmation then in my feelings. And we did. We left New York City 6 months before COVID hit and other things happened. But I didn't know in the moment why the Lord was telling me to leave. Maybe you knew with COVID, the fires in Oregon, maybe you knew why. And you were like, okay, that's just fear because of the circumstances. I'm not being prompted to act. But Hannah, as you come into the program, that's something we see a lot in our clients is they struggle to trust their intuition. They struggle to listen to themselves and they question themselves a lot. Okay. Am I doing the right thing? Is this what God wants? Or is it just what I want? Or, and in the program, we really help you to come back to yourself. And that was huge for me. I realized that I had been shoving down my intuition because it didn't make sense to my spouse. It didn't make sense to other people. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to ignore that or not talk about that part of my life, even though that's such a gift that I have. I think as women, we do have intuitive gifts. And so as we come into the program, that's something we really kind of dive in deep on an individual level and say, okay, what's getting in the way of you listening to yourself, of you trusting yourself? So those were just the thoughts I had for you, Hannah.
I love that. Thank you, Christy. So it's perfect lead in for next week's class, you guys. The perfect lead in. So next week I'm going to be talking about spiritual gifts. And so it's good to know, kind of gauge where you guys are in this situation, in this type of feeling, right? Because what I was expressing to Megan, so I'll give you an example. If say you're clearly all mothers, right? And you put your baby in a high chair and you put some food on her, high chair, and you walk away and you get in the other room and you just have this overwhelming sense of, I should go check on the baby. It's not, oh my gosh, the baby's choking. Like, the fear. It's like just this calm sense of knowing, like, I should go check on the baby right now. And your brain might go, what? That's weird. Why would I do that? Like, she's fine. But you follow that intuition and you go check on the baby, and then you notice she's choking and you're like, oh. So it's just knowing that the spirit doesn't speak through a sense of fear. It's just this inner voice and the spirit speaks to everyone differently. Like Megan was sharing, we were talking about this on the call for this upcoming call that I get to talk about next Friday. But it's this inner knowing of being able to get that sense of urgency. Does that make sense, Hannah? Like, I would love for you, if you are able to, Hannah, come off mute and maybe talk through it a little bit more, because there is, that sense of urgency, like Christy was talking about, urgency to go versus the fear of things. And so maybe the urgency was like the spirit speaking to you and saying, here's what's coming, here's where you could go, and it starts putting all the resources in place for you. Does that make sense? But it's not this fear-based. It might be an urgency, but it's not based out of fear. It's more like, hey, this is what you could do. Here's some steps you could take. And then as you ponder and pray about that, it may eventually lead to the fear, but the initial reaction of the spirit speaking to you was not a fear-based. What's the word? I just slipped my mind. It's not based out of fear. Like the initial urgency that you maybe felt was not fear-based. It was just like this urgency of, there's all these wildfires coming into Oregon, all the things, all the COVID things. And so just take a look at that. And so I would love maybe a little bit more insight if you could give it, if you're available.
And if you can't, you can put in the chat, Hannah. Like, some of us we're not in a place to be speaking out all the things, and it's okay if you want to still use the chat.
I can see you're trying to
And if talking,
but it looks like you're still muted. Okay.
She says she's trying to unmute, but it's not working. Yeah, sometimes you have to refresh, and I don't know. Maybe she's going to try to come back in.
On your phone, it's like it sometimes pops up and then it goes down. You're like, how can I place my fingers to get the pop-up to stay? So
And if this is helpful for others on the call, we would love to hear your thoughts in the chat. If you've had notes you've been taking, things that are making sense, you can drop those in the chat.
And I'll just touch on her. She mentioned that her husband wasn't on board. And Christy mentioned that too, right? And so this is a skill that we've been talking a lot about. Missy talks a lot about this, being open and honest with your spouse. There's been times that I've done things that my husband doesn't believe in a higher power. He's agnostic. And so like times when I do things, he's like, what in the world is she doing? But I just lead with my intuition. So we were just walking on this trail one day, and I saw these guys off in the distance, and they were placed just perfectly. And we live kind of in a homeless, it's kind of a homeless like central for the area. So I know that on that path that you can come across homeless people, right? And I wasn't fearful, but I all of a sudden saw this other path, and the spirit said, go that direction. And my husband and I just started going, and he's like, what are you doing? We're parked down there. And I said, yeah, I know. And he goes, okay. And I said, I'll tell you when we get to a place where I can speak, openly. And so he followed me, but I was just like, okay, like, but I had an impression that those two guys spaced out evenly had ill intention, right? And it wasn't this fearful, like, it was just the spirit being like, yeah, you should take this path and go. And I was like, okay. And I listened and I went. And again, I don't know what could have happened, or what the intention was for them. But then we got further along, and my husband's like, we're parked clear down. Like, there's the next pathway out is by our car. And I was like, yeah, I know. I just felt impressed. I used the words, I felt impressed by, I'll say spirit or God or universe, whatever I feel like. And I'll just say that. And I was like, it doesn't hurt us to go this direction. It didn't hurt us at all. And so I just said, that's just how and he was just like, okay. And he may not have been on board. Like, he kind of maybe rolled his eyes, probably. But I was just like, okay. And the more that I just lean into opening the door to, this is how I'm feeling, the more my husband actually is listening to my feelings, and he doesn't discard them anymore. He's like, okay, I'll listen to how you're feeling and be open to what your thoughts are along the way. So
Did you find the unmute button, Hannah?
I think I did. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
I can't tell if you guys can hear me. Did it work? Okay, good. So I think I missed some of what you were asking for more context. Is that what you said? So for us, it seems like now I'm starting to trust my intuition more, and my husband's starting to trust my intuition more. Like you were talking about the homeless thing in the past, like I would get those feelings of intuition. And if it's a small thing, my husband seemed to be able to kind of go with the flow more. And he's actually a pretty easygoing guy. It's not like he digs his heels in a lot, but this specific thing that I felt leading up to COVID, which was one of the bigger examples of like fear versus faith or whatever, it obviously requires a lot of things to be put in place. We would need a new career. We would need to sell our house, all this stuff. And this is part of a bigger picture for us. But at the time, it just felt so frantic that he confided in me later. He just felt like he couldn't even think straight. I was literally in like a panic for a year or two right before and during COVID in Oregon. And so I think that because I tend towards getting panicky and really emotional about stuff, it's harder for people to either listen to me or for me to even trust myself, because a lot of stuff comes through as fear for me rather than calm, faithful movements, I guess you could say.
thank you. I feel like that is a really good clarification. Yeah, like Robin just said, she says it takes practice, right? And so, yeah, it would be interesting to have a conversation with your husband now and kind of go back through what that, could have looked like for you guys if that's what you felt. But yeah, I personally have never felt led by the Spirit in fear myself. Like it might just be this, like I said, oh, take this path, do this thing, go check on your kid. Like it's just a direction. But again, I'll speak more next week on all of the ways that the Spirit speaks to us, and everybody is different. So
Reminded me when we were talking in the beginning with Jackie, she brought up so beautifully that she recognized that her anxiety was from putting the fear was putting her energy in the future about things she wasn't controlling, and how when she was able to bring herself, excuse me, back to the present, that's when we move out of anxiety, being present in our bodies, feeling our bodies. That's what causes anxiety, is when we're putting our energy out into the future. And so you've been able to recognize, we always say that awareness is the first step, Hannah. So you're recognizing, I have this pattern of when something comes up that I put my energy in the future, causing anxiety, causing fear, right? So as you look at that, be like, okay, maybe that's not because it's trying to tell me something, but because how my brain is processing this information. Right. And again, that's something in the program that we work through about coming back and being present in your body. That's something that we could work through further rather than we don't have time on one call, but.
I love all these thoughts personally. I recognize that a conversation like this for me years and years ago would have been beautiful. I now know these concepts, but they're so beautiful at whatever stage and thing you're in, like getting a reminder if you've known these things and then you forget. This is the human experience. This is the human experience. No one's broken if their feelings get overwhelming sometimes. You're not doing life wrong, right? It's just we learn a skill, we go through something, and we move. Yet we do see with all of our clientele and the Elevated Mother experience that skill of the awareness, knowing how to come back to ourself and being like, take the we talked about this in our Elevated Mother home call yesterday, that the logical mind and the emotional experience don't coexist. They don't function at the same time. So we learn a lot about emotional regulation and about got to let that process a little bit, got to witness it, see it, feel it, so that the logical brain can come back online. And that logical brain sits in the present most of the time if we're working on it. The logical brain has a hard time going out to the future because there's so many probabilities and it knows it. It's like, that's a lot to consider. And if the baby's crying right here in my lap, all of a sudden I'm in overwhelm. Right? So it's important. It's so important. These things we're talking about are so important. It makes all the difference in the world. The Jackie Muhlstein that we're talking about, she was in that for years of this and this and this and what happened in the past and what happened in the future. All this came and was like, oh, the only thing I can really do anything about is right now. So how do I feel right now? What's the story I want to tell about right now? Yes, I'm going to go running. She became a runner. That was a goal of hers, to become a runner. And we have all witnessed that she did that this year. It's so fun. It's so fun. And other clients have had that same experience. We're like, well, I just want to have more moments of this thing. Yes, you do. And that comes in a moment. Serena said, I have had some experiences where I didn't have fear, but it was very clear. Absolutely. Yes. Write that in your book of wins, Serena. We always want to have our book of proof, those little things that help us be like, oh yeah, I might have a pattern that looks like this, but I also have a pattern that looks like this. Which fruit do I want? So when we presence, and then you come back to your choice, you come back to your power, come back home where God is there and the Spirit is there and the peace is there. Come back home because that's our natural state. And then we make a choice. Make a choice from there, right? We always have a choice, no matter what situation you're in. Always, always, always. Other experiences, thoughts, things you want to be coached on. We still have a good 9 minutes. We can do a lot in 9 minutes. Yes, Hannah just listed out. Yes, write that down and remember that, Hannah. She says, once I got back to the present more, I realized the baby steps. Yes. And the calm intuition to change careers, save money, become self-sufficient were coming instead of the need to flee out of fear. Oh, beautiful. Perhaps the same end result, but a more calm, calculated approach. That's where you say, which experience do I want? Right? So good, Hannah. This is for you. This is Hannah Bruce. This is her saying, this is how this experience was, and this is how this experience was. Everyone's is a little different, but you sat in it long enough to figure out what it was. So good. So good. It's the power of good coaching, ladies. When you ask effective questions, people come home to themselves. They find the answer was there all along. We can give context and examples and skills. Ultimately, you come back to yourself and the answer was there. And it's the right answer. So good.
So, can I just share something along those same lines? Unless someone else has something they want to be coached on, but so I was talking with Missy the other day because, the election's coming, all the things, who knows what the world's going to do. It's all the things, right? But as we were talking, it's like, there's a difference between preparing, right? Which is what Hannah did, started saving money, became more self-sufficient, changed her careers. Like there's a difference between living in the fear of the unknown and preparing for the possibilities for the future, right? So I love that Hannah said that. Like they changed the narrative and started doing these baby steps to preparing for the things that she wanted and how much different that felt. But so if anyone else is like, okay, there's all this craziness going on in the world, I don't even watch the news, so I only see little bits and pieces of what's going on, but it's more just me preparing myself and listening to the intuition that I have received, which is just prepare, just, buy an extra jar of peanut butter at the store one day. Like it's not just this overwhelming, like, oh, I got to go out and hoard toilet paper. By the way, I still don't understand. I still don't get the whole hoarding toilet paper concept, but I keep an extra pack just to be safe, because we got close to running out during COVID, but it's not a hoarding. It's just like, oh, I'll just buy an extra pack. I'll just always have an extra pack of toilet paper at my house. So if anyone's in this sense of fear, going down that same path of what Hannah's talking about, I feel like just a call to action of being just like, follow what the Spirit teaches you and is guiding you to do. And overall, it's like, I love what Robin said, coming home to yourself and learning how the Spirit speaks to you and gaining those spiritual gifts that we'll be talking about next week, which I'm excited about. So here's another plug for that call next week. But it's learning the difference between preparation, living in the moment, and helping yourself get out of that sense of fear for what the future could hold.
I think that this is such a beautiful skill. I had learned this skill before COVID, and I believe that's why COVID was not traumatic for me at all. Zero. I have zero trauma, zero fear. Was following those little, it was like about January of that year, I did have a thought. You don't have as much food storage as you had before. Go pick up a few things. That was the message that I had. So later that day, I went to, we didn't have a Costco here at the time, but I went to Sam's Club and I just picked up a few extra things, including toilet paper. Like I picked up a few extra cases of some stuff. And I remember coming home, like, and I just like put it in. And then later in March, it was like, And every week I went to the store and got what I needed. And all through COVID, I did the same thing. I would go on Tuesday morning, I would get what I needed for the week, and I would go home. And like when they closed down the playground, I took my kid over to the mountain to play. Like I wasn't like, we can't go to the playground because I just pivoted and moved around. All of a sudden it was fine, like, so I recognize that this skill, ladies, is, I think, a life skill. And as the mother can learn to trust, which I believe, my team believes, a mother's intuition is our direct power from God. Like, we just have it. Women just have it. And thinking about a mother that gains these skills, she gains those elevation skills to be able to witness her own thoughts, be able to map her own pattern, being able to sit in the feelings, being able to know when contrast is showing up, being able to make goals, learning, oh yeah, I will achieve this goal alongside life. My goal will not make life that different. It should be a goal that matters to me because of my fulfillment, my purpose, my joy, my light. Life will go on too with me. It's not one or the other. They get to go together. And an elevated mother gets to know that and work through that. And as a mom, I'm seeing my skills starting to transfer to my children. My husband and I were just talking about this early this morning, about how our kids are having a completely different experience. They're having a completely different experience. And again, Jackie Mielstein put a beautiful comment. I think it was in the main thread. I don't know, but about how her and her husband had discovered where they had some scarcity ideas around travel and spending money and what that looked like, and how they're looking at those things because she's moved to an elevated mindset where she can sit in those kinds of conversations and see it for what it is, right? And so our kids are seeing it's okay to have the feelings. It's okay to do this thing and talk this out. And here's this skill and this thing. They're going to have a greater capacity for their future than even I had because they're going to live so much of life with this knowledge and this skill. And it just changes so much. It changes how I interact with their grandparents, which, I mean, it just changes everything. It just changes everything. Yes. Amen. I love the comments. Megan says, I find as I write down in my book of wins, I can refer back to it when I'm having a hard time and forget the beauty of my life. Oh, yes. Yes. How many times in the scriptures does God tell people to take record? Why does he do that? And I firmly believe we should be taking record. Take record of your good moments and the hard moments so you can look back and have the evidence, right? Megan also said, a mother's intuition is a direct power from God. We have it. For me, sometimes I've questioned it. For so long, I've forgotten it. And I've been able to spend the last year in EMX being reminded of this. Forever grateful for this space that has helped me come back to myself. Oh, amen. There is nothing I don't think in my life that has been more beautiful than when we see our clients come on to a call or, you know, you're having a session or something and you can see it. It's like a light goes on in their eyeballs and they feel so whole, complete. That's coming home, you guys. That is coming home. Is it not? It's like when you go home to your mom's for Christmas. If you have a good relationship with your mom, I guess, and you walk in the door and you have that hug and all the familiar smells are there. It's like the same thing. You come home to your soul and you come home to God and the Spirit and your power. It just changes everything. It just changes everything. All of a sudden, being in that space of home and being held and being worthy and having all the power backing you, these decisions all of a sudden are so doable. Like, God's got me. God's got me. Beautiful. Latia says she's been journaling this morning. Yes. Yes. Just like, you know, our first client this morning, Jacqueline, talking about, I think I went to this old pattern. Yeah, we probably did, because we do that as humans. It helps us. It helps us to stay grounded, and then we can make a different choice, right? So good. If you have that recorded, every time you record those wins, you had the experience, you record it, tell us in the wins channel. Tell us in the wins channel. That's another layer. Your brain will retain that path more often, right? So write it down, share it, talk it out, come on, make a video for us, whatever it is. And it just keeps that as more of your dominant experience. So lots of skills, lots of beautiful things this morning. If you loved this call, share it with a friend, tell them to get their butt in here because everybody should be here. And have an amazing weekend, you guys. Love you all.